Okay, dear students, I welcome you all for the next session of electronic devices and circuits. So, in the last class, we discussed what is DC load line, what is Q point, then what is the significance of selecting the Q point, etc. So, let me ask you one question. So, how do we fix this set of Q points, or how we obtain a fixed value of VCE or IC? Of course, it is with the help of some external circuit, that is, there can be voltage sources or there can be passive components like resistors and capacitors in the circuit to make the desired Q points. Okay, so a transistor alone cannot set the desired Q points. We need an external circuitry, a battery source is required or a voltage source is required, resistors and capacitors are required. Okay, now even after, suppose if you are biasing the transistor to operate as an amplifier, we know that the Q point is halfway between the saturation and cutoff points. So even after fixing the Q point midway between the saturation point and the cutoff point, there are chances that the Q point shift. Okay, it never remains fixed. There are chances that it might get shifted. Okay, so if the Q point is moving towards the cutoff point, we know that the positive half cycle of the voltage will get clipped. And if the Q point is moving towards or shifting towards the saturation point, the negative half cycle of the waveform will get clipped. So we won't obtain a faithful amplification of the desired signal. Okay, why this Q point is getting shifted, or why the Q point is not stable? Okay, or what are the factors affecting the stability of operating point? Okay, so there are a lot of reasons behind it. We'll discuss one by one. So stabilization is nothing but the process of making the operating point independent of temperature changes or variations in transistor parameters. Okay, so in spite of the variations in temperature or the transistor parameters, the fixed operating point should not change. Okay, so throughout the operation of the transistor, it should remain fixed, or the values of IC, VCE become independent of temperature variations, or even if you replace the transistor with another transistor of the same kind, the operating point should not change. Alright, so we'll discuss what is the need for stabilization. So the first point is the temperature dependence of IC. Okay, you know that the collector current IC is temperature dependent. Temperature dependent means if there is a rise in temperature or if the temperature increases, of course the reverse leakage current will increase. And what is the reason for that? Okay, if we increase the temperature, the number of minority carriers will increase, and this increases the reverse leakage current, which in turn increase the collector current. Okay, so the collector current increases from what it was fixed. Okay, next is the individual variations. Suppose we have a BC547 transistor. The value of current gain beta of BC147 lies between 100 to 600. Okay, so if we have a BC547 transistor with beta 100, if you take another transistor, the same transistor 547, the beta might be 600. Okay, so if in our circuit, if our transistor fails or if the transistor burns, we have to replace the transistor with another one, right? So under that case, if we replace the transistor with another, the same kind of transistor, even then we will not be obtaining the desired characteristics. Okay, so that is what is individual variations. And the last point is thermal runaway. Okay, As I have already discussed the concept of thermal runaway in your previous semester. So, as the collector current increases due to rise in temperature, the power dissipation across the collector will also increase. This power dissipation generates a heat in the collector region. Okay, so as a result of this heat generated, again more and more number of minority carriers are generated. So more minority carrier current is obtained, which in turn increases the power dissipation. Okay, so this is a cumulative process. Okay, so as the power increases or as the power dissipation increases, the temperature will increase. Again, the number of carriers will increase, which in turn again will increase the temperature. So it is acting like a cumulative process, and the transistor gets heated up and finally it will burn. Okay, so this process is known as thermal runaway, or the transistor will be getting damaged. Okay, now, so the temperature dependence of IC. You know that IC is beta times IB plus the reverse leakage current ICEO. What is ICEO? ICEO is the reverse leakage current from collector to emitter when base is open. The third terminal base is open. The same equation can be rewritten as beta IB plus beta plus 1 into ICBO. So please note down this equation, it's very important. So this is a very important topic. The need for bias stabilization is very important. Okay, so in this we discuss the first point, the temperature dependence of IC. And in this equation, ICBO is the leakage current from collector to base when the third terminal emitter is open. Okay, here it is collector to emitter, leakage current from collector to emitter, and here in the second expression it is the leakage current from collector to base. In both the cases, O represent the third terminal is open circuit. Okay, so when the value of ICEO, this reverse leakage current doubles for every 10 degrees Celsius increase in temperature. Okay, so if ICEO is 10 milliampere, and if there is a 10 degrees centigrade increase in the temperature, the value of ICEO gets doubled. This 10 milliampere, the original value of 10 milliampere now becomes 100 milliamperes. Okay, and the base emitter voltage is also temperature dependent. The transistor current gain beta also increases with increase in temperature. Okay, so ICEO doubles for every 10 degrees centigrade. The value of beta or the transistor current gain increases with increase in temperature. So if there is some kind of temperature variations in the circuit, the Q point or IC will not remain the same, it gets shifted. Okay, next is the individual variations. So what is meant by individual variations? So as I told you earlier, the value of beta might be different for different transistors of the same type. Even if we purchase two numbers of BC547 transistors, okay, the same transistor BC547, the value of beta will be different for the two transistors. Okay, so if we in our circuit, if one of the transistors gets failed, if we replace the first one with the second transistor, we may not be obtaining the desirable characteristics. So this is from one transistor to another. Even if the transistors are of the same kind, the individual parameters might change. Okay, so when the transistor circuit fails, we cannot replace the failed one with another one. Okay, and the last reason is thermal runaway. So as I already discussed, you know that as the temperature increases, ICEO will increase. So this in turn increase IC. Okay, so this increase in IC increases the power dissipation or the heat dissipation across the collector, and this increased heat will further generate more and more minority carriers, which increase the number of minority carriers, which in turn increase the collector current. So this is a cumulative process. More the heat, more the number of charge carriers, and more collector current. So after a time interval or over a time period, more heat gets dissipated on the collector region, and eventually the transistor will get destroyed or gets burned. Okay, so this is thermal runaway. So what is the need for biasing? The first point is the temperature dependence of IC. The second point is individual transistor variations, and the third point is thermal runaway. Okay, so all these are temperature dependent parameters. Okay, so we are designing a biasing circuit so that after fixing the Q point, it is made independent of the temperature variations. It is made independent of the transistor individual parameter variations. So that is what is transistor bias stability. Okay, I hope you understood. That is, with the help of a bias circuit, if we fix that Q point, okay, even if the temperature varies, or even if we replace the transistor, the DC parameters or the AC parameters will not change, or the collector current or base current, we see whatever be, all these values will not change. Okay, so we have a definition for the stability factor. So IC should be kept constant in spite of variations in temperature, ICBO, thermal runaway, or individual transistor parameters. And the extent to which a biasing circuit is successful in maintaining this measured value is called as stability factor. Okay, so there is a mathematical expression for the stability factor. Stability factor S is equal to D represent change delta IC by delta ICO at constant IB and beta. Okay, so the stability factor ensures that the value of collector current is kept constant even if the temperature varies, even if there is thermal runaway, or even if the transistor is replaced with another of the same kind. Okay, so we have a lot of stabilization techniques to make use of a resistive biasing circuit. So in the next class we'll discuss the different types of transistor biasing.